I was just a young kid, and the events of that fateful night still send shivers down my spine. Today, I'm going to share my first-person account of how I narrowly escaped murder, and it's a story that will have you on the edge of your seat. It all started on the scariest night of my life. There were 5 of us. In my family, me at 12, my older brother Hank at 15, and my little sister Sally, just 6. It was a seemingly ordinary Saturday night, and tragedy struck. Hank was out riding his bicycle with a friend when a car collided with him. The driver called my mom, who in turn called the police, and an ambulance rushed Hank to the hospital. As I sat alone at home, engrossed in Raiders of the Lost Ark on Netflix, I heard my mom's frantic cries and panicked conversations with my dad. Something was terribly wrong. I rushed to the kitchen, my heart pounding, and asked my mom what was happening. All she managed to convey was that Hank had been hit by a car and had a broken leg. My dad had the car ready in the driveway, and my mom took my little sister with her. I was asked if I'd be fine staying home alone, and with youthful bravado, I said, "No problem." Little did I know what awaited me that night. My apprehension about Hank's well-being was quickly overshadowed by a growing sense of unease. As hours passed, and my movie continued, I couldn't help but hope to hear my family's voices when they returned. However, silence reigned, and there were no familiar sounds of their arrival. The eerie feeling that something was terribly wrong gnawed at me. I couldn't ignore it. Despite my fear, I ventured out of my room, quietly opening the door and peeking under the banister that overlooked the living room. What I saw next sent chills down my spine. The living room, shrouded in darkness, was not empty. 3 tall figures prowled around with flashlights, and it was clear they weren't friends or family. I froze in terror, too petrified to even take a breath. It took me several agonizing seconds to muster the courage to retreat quietly into my bedroom, shutting the door with a loud click. Desperation drove me to my closet, where I hid behind a box of old toys and a bag of winter clothes. I prayed that I wasn't in plain sight. My heart raced as minutes stretched into an eternity, waiting for my bedroom door to open, and eventually it did. At that very moment, I was certain I was going to be killed. Footsteps echoed in my room, and I couldn't determine if it was one intruder or 2. I listened as they moved around my bed, the blankets being ripped off. The room fell into an eerie silence. The footsteps drew closer to the closet, where I was concealed among the clothes. A moment of silence, then the closet door creaked open. My heart threatened to burst from my chest as I held my breath, head buried in my arms. The door remained open for an agonizingly long time. I dared not move a muscle. I was paralyzed by fear. For what felt like an eternity, I could only hear heavy breathing. Then, finally, the door closed and the intruder walked away. It was only after I mustered the courage to look up that I realized how exposed I had been behind the box of toys and bag of clothes. I had been right there, hidden in plain sight, and I had miraculously escaped the intruder's notice. I stayed in that closet for over an hour, trembling with fear, until I heard my parents downstairs. They had returned to find the front door open and the house ransacked. Many valuables were missing, but what was most important was that I had narrowly escaped a fate that was too chilling to contemplate. Looking back on that night, I can't help but wonder if the man who opened my closet door had seen me hiding there. Perhaps he was just a burglar, motivated solely by the desire to rob our house with no intent to harm a child. Or perhaps, in the darkness, he simply didn't notice me, and by the narrowest of margins, I had escaped a fate that would have haunted me forever. Before I moved to California, I lived on my dad's ranch in Colorado, right in the middle of nowhere. It was vast and beautiful, but it had its own share of peculiarities. You know, just like that old cartoon, Courage, the Cowardly Dog said, strange things happen in the middle of nowhere. Living in a rural setting can be peaceful, but it can also be quite boring. And that's not all. We had our fair share of unwelcome visitors. My dad owned not one, not two, but 3 different guns. He had to because there had been numerous incidents of trespassing. Let me take you back to a hot June night. My parents were away on vacation, and my little brother was out. It was just me at home. The night was so warm that I had all the windows open. I was watching TV in the living room when something extraordinary happened. The motion-sensing patio light suddenly illuminated the darkness outside. It was a clear indication of significant movement. I thought it might be my little brother returning home, but when I looked out, there was no one. Then came the knocking at the front door. Our door had a peephole. For a reason, we needed to see who was there before opening the door. But when I peered through it, there was no one. I was still hoping it was a harmless prank. But then it escalated. The knocking moved to the living room window. 2 voices, one deep and male, the other high-pitched and female chanted. My heart was racing. I wanted it to be my brother and his girlfriend, playing a prank. Anything but the alternative. The banging on the window continued, and it moved to the dining room. I hadn't shut the blinds there, and from my angle, I saw 2 figures, but their faces were obscured. I had to act. I rushed upstairs to my dad's room, knowing where he kept his gun. I loaded the rifle and returned to the dining room window, but they were gone. With the loaded gun, I decided it was time to confront the situation head-on. Stepping outside, I did a quick lap around the house, checking on the cattle. I was ready to use the gun if necessary. The property seemed clear, and the cattle were safe. I went back inside, checking every door before heading upstairs. Just when I thought it was over, I heard a chilling sound downstairs and outside. Someone was pounding at the front door, and a man was screaming at the top of his lungs, not saying words, just screaming. I grabbed the rifle and fired a shot into the night. The screaming and pounding stopped abruptly, and 2 sets of footsteps quickly retreated. The night fell silent, except for the crickets. The rest of the night was uneventful, and nothing like that ever happened again. It wasn't my brother and his girlfriend. It was something else. My dad was proud that I protected the property, and I couldn't be more grateful for him owning those guns. And there you have it, folks. My chilling experience from my dad's ranch in Colorado. Sometimes, reality is scarier than any horror movie. If you enjoyed this first-person adventure, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more thrilling stories like this one.